Norway will allocate an additional $150 million to provide Ukraine with electricity and gas. This was announced by the country's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre during a meeting with the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. The support will be provided in cooperation with the European Union and will help cover Ukraine's energy needs ahead of the fourth winter, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion by the Russian Federation. For more details about Zelensky's European tour, which included visits to Norway and Sweden, see the report by our colleagues.
The allocation of $150 million by the Norwegian government for the purchase of gas for Ukraine became Norway's third energy aid package in 2025. Now the total contribution amounts to about $400 million.
Norway is providing Ukraine with strong support and will continue to do so. It is very important to maintain close dialogue with the Ukrainian authorities to ensure that aid meets the needs on the ground in Ukraine. During my meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, I presented Norway's plans for further assistance to Ukraine through 2026. I believe that support will remain strong.
The partners also discussed bilateral defense cooperation. In particular, this concerns the production of drones and missiles, strengthening Ukraine's air defense, as well as expanding the Pearl Initiative. Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized that Russia does not intend to stop. Therefore, it is necessary to continue exerting joint pressure on Putin. Let us recall that during the Ramstein format meeting, Norway announced it would provide $600 million for UAVs, electronic warfare systems, and explosives for Ukraine. In addition, Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre stated his readiness to finance the purchase of Patriots for Ukraine from the United States.
We are very grateful for the tremendous support from the Norwegian people, as well as for your personal and diplomatic involvement, which is also of great importance. Secondly, energy. I believe the people of Norway understand how important this is, how critical it is for protecting our people. Air defense systems, missiles. For these systems, all of this saves human lives. We are very grateful to you and the people of Norway for saving the lives of Ukrainians.
The visit to Norway was part of the Ukrainian president's European tour. Afterwards, Volodymyr Zelensky traveled to Sweden, where he discussed with the Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson the Russian Federation's war against Ukraine and bilateral cooperation in the field of defense. They visited the Swedish defense group Saab, which is the manufacturer of the Gripen fighter jet, the Global Eye reconnaissance aircraft, missile systems, anti-tank infantry weapons, and other equipment.
We signed a letter of intent between Sweden and Ukraine, and this is the beginning of a long journey. This will bring us one step closer to a major export agreement. This means great opportunities for the Ukrainian Air Force, for Sweden, and for our defense industry. Sweden is one of the best and largest military donors to Ukraine. In particular, we are helping with artillery and air defense. This agreement is not aimed at specific deliveries. At this stage, it is about long-term cooperation. We're talking about 100 to 150 Gripen Series E fighter jets, which are now beginning to be produced. This will help significantly strengthen Ukraine's air forces. Yes, these are very impressive aircraft, powerful aviation platforms that allow for a wide range of missions. Everyone can see what threats this helps to counter. Russian strikes against our country do not stop, so our defense strategy is a multi-component defense based on many elements. From air defense systems like Patriot and NASAMS to combat aviation. Sweden is helping us a lot with this, and today we have started working on acquiring Gripens for Ukraine. We expect that the future contract will allow us to obtain at least 100 of these aircraft. And
on Thursday, October 23rd, President Zelensky will attend a meeting of the leaders of EU member states in Brussels, where he will also hold talks with the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. Let us recall that Ukraine and Europe are preparing a plan to end Russia's war against Ukraine. It consists of 12 points and provides for the gradual lifting of sanctions on the Russian Federation if it commits to a ceasefire. Another point concerns negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow on the administration of the occupied territories. At the same time, neither Europe nor Ukraine will legally recognize the occupied Ukrainian lands as Russian. The proposal responds to recent calls by US President Donald Trump for Zelensky and Putin to freeze hostilities along the current front line before the start of peace negotiations.
The plan stipulates that after Russia agrees to a ceasefire and both sides fix the territorial lines, all deported children will be returned to Ukraine and prisoners of war will be exchanged. In addition, Ukraine will receive security guarantees, funding for reconstruction, and an accelerated path to joining the European Union, according to Bloomberg.
The plan is still under discussion. It is known that its implementation will be overseen by a commission chaired by U.S. President Donald Trump, Bloomberg reports. Territorial issues, security guarantees for Ukraine, and strengthening Kyiv's defense capabilities will most likely also be the main topics at the upcoming meeting of European leaders this Friday in London, as part of the coalition of willing nations.
If the issue of territorial negotiations arises, only President Zelensky has the right to conduct these talks on behalf of his country. No one else has the right to do so. Therefore, it is up to Ukraine to decide for itself and its territory, and up to the Europeans to decide for themselves and their own security. On Friday, we will hold a meeting of the Coalition of Willing Nations, partly in person and partly virtual, which will bring some of us together in London, and President Zelensky will be there. The only kind of peace that can exist is a strong and lasting peace, one that meets the requirements of international law and creates conditions for its stability.
On the eve of the summit, European leaders, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, called for an immediate ceasefire. They proposed to consider the current line of demarcation as a starting point for negotiations.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Sweden will sell Ukraine between 120 and 150 modern Saab Gripen fighter jets. Production has already begun, and overall, the deal will span 10 to 15 years. This was announced by Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson during a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukraine and Sweden have already signed a memorandum of intent. According to the President of Ukraine, the first planes could be delivered as early as next year. Zelensky added that Kyiv is already preparing pilots to operate the Swedish fighter jets.
Yes, these are very impressive aircraft, powerful aviation platforms that allow for a wide range of missions. Everyone can see what kinds of threats this helps to counter. Russian strikes against our country do not stop, so our defense strategy is a multi-layered one, based on many components. From air defense systems like Patriot and NASAMS to combat aircraft. Sweden is helping us a lot with this, and today we have started working on acquiring Gripens for Ukraine. We expect that the future contract will allow us to acquire at least 100 of these aircraft.
Ukraine, together with its European partners, is developing a plan to end the war along the current front line. This was reported by the news agency Bloomberg, citing European diplomats. The document allegedly consists of 12 points, and a peace commission will be responsible for overseeing its implementation, under the chairmanship of US President Donald Trump. The plan stipulates that after the ceasefire, all deported children will be returned to Ukraine, and prisoners of war will be exchanged.
Kyiv is to receive security guarantees, funding for reconstruction, and an accelerated path to joining the European Union. Sanctions against Russia will be gradually eased, and the Kremlin's frozen assets will only be returned after Moscow agrees to participate in Ukraine's post-war reconstruction.
Ukraine has once again declared its readiness to end the war, while Russia is once again dodging peace. This was stated by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He noted that it is precisely the Tomahawks that are the card the Kremlin takes seriously. After all, the discussion about possible deliveries of American missiles to Ukraine has become a strong investment in Russian diplomacy. Zelensky emphasized that Kyiv will continue to discuss Ukraine's long-range capabilities with Europe and the United States. The country's air defense will be a top priority.
The front line could be the beginning.
The front line could become the start of diplomacy. Instead, Russia is once again doing everything it can to dodge diplomacy. And as soon as the issue of long-range capabilities for Ukraine moved a bit further, it happened almost automatically. Russia became less interested in diplomacy. This is a signal that this very issue, the issue of long-range capabilities, may provide an irreplaceable key to peace. The greater Ukraine's long-range capabilities, the more willing Russia is to end the war.
On October 24th, a new meeting of the Coalition of the Willing will take place in London. The meeting is scheduled to be held in a hybrid format, both online and offline. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, will also participate in it. This was announced by French leader Emmanuel Macron at a press conference following the summit of Mediterranean alliance leaders in Slovenia, where the war of the Russian Federation against Ukraine was also discussed.
Ukraine continues to resist with great courage, introducing innovations and producing goods. And on Friday we will hold a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, partly in person and partly virtually. It will bring some of us together in London, and President Zelensky will be there. So we continue to move forward. The only possible peace is one that is lasting, sustainable, and able to address the issues at hand. It must meet the requirements of international law and create conditions for its stability.
Russia may be ready for such a foreign NATO by 2030. This is the opinion of the EU Commissioner for Defence and Space, Andrius Kubilius. According to him, European intelligence services claim that the Kremlin is discussing the possibility of so-called testing of Article 5 of the alliance, and this could potentially take place somewhere in regions bordering the Russian Federation. Most often, this refers to the Baltic countries, Finland and Poland.
I trust the intelligence services, especially the German ones. But whether Russia will decide to take any action or not, we cannot say yet. In any case, we need to take these reports seriously and prepare for defense. This is our agenda. The agenda for defense capability until 2030. Because, as intelligence reports, Russia may be ready to test us by 2030. Andrius Kubilius, EU Commissioner for Defense and Space. In an interview with the TV channel Current Time,